お待たせいたしました。これよりメドピアトラックでは Nuxt チーム&デベロップメントウェブエンジニアリングコンサルタントアレキサンダー・リヒター様によるセッション Gems of Nuxt 8 Futures Every Nuxt Developer Should Know をお届けいたします。本セッションでは AI 英語教材 ABC を開発、個人の可能性を最大化する株式会社グロービー様の提供により、英語から日本語への同時通訳をご利用いただけます。ご希望の方は、お席に置いてある受信機をお使いください。なお、受信機はセッションが終了したら、本トラックの外には持ち出さず、電源をお切りになり、そのままお席に置いていただきますようお願いいたします。また、Vue Fes Japan 2024では、4つのトラックを同時進行しております。このメドピアトラックについては、画面の上の方にあります、ハッシュタグ、Vue Fes メドピアでどんどん感想を共有してください。Mr. Lichter, are you ready?
Yes.
それでは皆様、どうぞ温かい拍手でお迎えください。
Thank you, everybody, for this warm welcome. Vue Fes, how are you feeling? Good. Lovely. Great to hear that. First time in Japan. Had a lovely time so far, and it's great to be here on stage at Vue Fes 2024. And I know some of you are here because of this logo, because of this framework. You might use Vue in your applications, and you might use Nuxt.js. So quick question, who of you is using Nuxt.js in their applications? Almost all of you here. Perfect. That's great. And I hope you all enjoy using it. So let's talk a little bit about some features you might not be aware of. Let's talk about the gems of Nuxt.js. 8 features every Nuxt developer should know. The Vue Fes 2024 edition. Before, a few words about me. I'm Alex. I had a wonderful introduction already, so I don't have to say that much. A web engineering consultant, speaker, as you can see. Also an instructor and a podcast host of the podcast Deja Vu. Anyone here knows the Deja Vu podcast? Oh yeah, a few people. Great. The others, wait for the end. You can check it out. I'm also on the Nuxt.js team. I release videos on my YouTube channel. I live stream every now and then on Twitter and have a website where I blog, well, once a year or so. And also, of course, I'm on GitHub. So let's talk about Nuxt 4. That's the excitement I want to hear. Can I get a little drum roll? Like, oh, it's not there yet. Yes, we still have to wait a bit for the release, but today, right now, or better after the conference, you can already start using things from Nuxt 4. You can already opt into the breaking changes, the new directory structure, and so on and so on. It's not that difficult. It's pretty easy, actually. If you have your Nuxt config, just add these 3 lines here. Future compatibility version 4, and that's it. Great, right? So you can start fresh. Even in new projects, you can just initialize them with this very easy command, and you start a new project with Nuxt 4 breaking changes already. And this includes a lot of things. Lots of things you might never bother about. A few internals, but also a new folder structure. And you might wonder, why do we need a new folder structure? It's great as it is, and I agree, but let's have a look. We can have a lot of folders in Nuxt.js, right? Some with specific meanings, some maybe from some modules. And, well, we can even structure them a bit better, because the new folder structure, that will just add an app folder, right? So a lot of things just move into an app folder. And the idea behind it is pretty simple. We want to separate even more the server part, powered by Nitro. You heard about that from Puya beforehand. And the app part, where your Vue and Nuxt.js code lives. So you don't accidentally import a Pina store in your server or a H3 helper in your Nuxt code. But that's not all. I mean, you have the clear separation then. Let's get rid of all the subfolders. We even have one more thing. a shared folder. The shared folder comes especially handy if you have functions that can be used in the Vue and Nuxt part and in the Nitro part. So contextless functions. Very important, this is still work in progress. There is an open PR that you can check out and an issue for that. And you can even add it yourself already today. It can be added in userland. The idea is, as mentioned before, having shared code that can be used on both sides. So no Vue context, no Nitro context, no Nuxt context. One thing that we want to add there as well is import protection. So you guard yourself against accidentally adding context in these functions, like app in your store, a composable, and so on and so on. And of course, auto imports is also something that we want there for the shared utilities and also the shared types. Because, well, we all use TypeScript here, I hope, please. So we can have our types auto-imported from there as well on the server side and also on the Vue and Nuxt side, so to say. If you want to, links afterwards in the slides. There is an issue for the implementation. You know what? Let me quickly open that here. There's even the pull request straight away. It's still pending, as we see here, but things are happening. So if we scroll down here, Daniel committed a few things last week. It's about to happen. OK, let's move on from the new folder structure to something you can use no matter if you use Nuxt for breaking changes already or not, which is Nuxt scripts. Anyone here used Nuxt scripts already? It's like almost no one. OK, perfect. Let's have a look what this is. So let me click on this wonderful link. And the documentation side. Third-party scripts meets Nuxt developer experience. Of course, a lot of products, we build a lot of applications have third-party scripts that can be a simple YouTube video, Google Maps, services like tracking services, logging. And of course, they shouldn't impact our performance. So what we want to do is we want to maybe load them lazily. We maybe want to load them on a click, and so on and so on. This module was created in collaboration with the Google Chrome Aurora team. And the idea is pretty simple. We have a bunch of scripts, like Google Analytics, for example, but various others that you can load straight away. If the script is not loaded yet, there is a proxy you can use to send things straight away, execute functions, and whenever the script is loaded, well, we have everything saved in the proxy. This can just be fired away so you don't lose any data. And you can trigger the whole things manually. There are various triggers, like as I said before, on scroll, when the browser is idle, and so on, so on, so on. And not only that, there are also components built in, for example, for YouTube, for Google Maps, and other things, where you can load a facade component. So you make sure you don't load the whole iframe, because that takes pretty long. No, you only load the facade component when you need the video. There you go. So an example is actually also on the website. And while I scroll there, also thank you for all the contributions out there. If you want to, there's still some open issues. Documentation is always a good idea. So we have some videos here. And this is actually using the Nuxt scripts facade component already. So what I can show you real quickly is how this actually looks like. Let me open the page real quick. And then we see how this looks like on GitHub. So in here, we have watch intros from the pros here. And then we just have a script YouTube player. We put the video ID in, and we can even have a template for what happens when the loading is awaited. So while it's actually loading the actual component, and so on and so on. It is really, really handy, and it's worth using. So whenever you need a third-party script, Nuxt scripts is a great way to go. And now you might wonder, wait, we have a script that's hosted somewhere else. That's not very common. Can we use that too? And the answer is yes. I actually show very in-depth in this video how that works, because I just loaded gist, right, from GitHub. That's just there. And the best part is you can even bundle this script at build time. So you can say, okay, whenever I build my application, take that script, bundle it, and I don't have to rely. So let's say if the script changes, I don't care. I have my bundled version. Plus, it's really good for privacy, right? For the GDPR, people here are aware of that. It's tricky, but with Nuxt scripts, it's really easy to make in the end. And there are a lot of things you can do with Nuxt scripts to improve the performance. And of course, also data protection. You have cookie consent APIs and much, much more. So this is a module to definitely check out. It works fine. It is used in production on many, many sites. And if you think, oh yeah, there's a script that's not in the registry here, for example, another analytics script, tracking, and so on, why not create an issue or send a PR, right? Open source. So let's quickly check out the next gem, because this is something nobody used here so far, 1 or 2 people. Give it a try if you have third-party scripts, because most of you have. Get cached data. Anyone here knows the get cached data function? Oh, yeah. Few people raising their hands. That's good, that's good. So we all like to fetch data, right? And we just say, okay, we have use fetch here. We ignore the types. We're a bit lazy today. Yeah, it's fine. And we fetch some joke and set some headers. But we don't want to fetch a new joke every time we switch from a page A to page B. So instead, we can say, oh, if there is data already with the getCached function, okay, no problem. Let's access Nuxt app.payload.data key, right? The Nuxt app comes from Nuxt app over there, from use Nuxt app. And we say if it's existing already, either statically provided or already fetched, just use the data there. And you only have one request on the client side. You don't have to refetch things again and again. Of course, if now a user starts hard refreshing the page with F5, right, or Command R, then it's not cached anymore. There are other ways to do that, though. But now you might wonder, OK, that's great, but what if I want to refetch data at some point? What if I want to have some kind of time to live, some expiration date? That's also possible. It's a little bit more work, but let's look into how that would look like. I'll go through the code step by step. So first of all, we have this wonderful transform function here. This transform function allows us to take whatever comes back from that request and change it. Usually it's used to say, oh, let's remove some things we don't need, make things smaller. But in this case, we add something which is called fetched at, to just say, OK, this data was fetched at a certain date. We can do that. Maybe that's even coming from the API already. That's also fine. But in this case, we add that. And then we have our getCached again. And the first line is already very familiar, right? We say what we said before, get the data. And now we say if it's not there, if the data doesn't exist yet, we just return undefined, so to say, or void 0 for the minification fans under here. And then the data will simply be fetched, because we tell the useFetch function, OK, no data returned, all fine, fetch the data originally. But what if the data is too old and we want to refetch the data, but there is data? So let's take that case. We checked here if there's no data, so there will be data available. And then we check the expiration date. We check the fetched at, right? We then say, OK, let's add an arbitrary time, like 10 seconds, right? 10 times 1,000 milliseconds. And then we checked if it's expired or not. And if it's expired, then we also just return nothing. Just say, like, OK, we pretend there is no data. So it can be refetched. And the happy case, there is data, and it's not expired. Just return it, and we're good to go. And while this seems quite a lot of code, and you might want to have it in certain places, no worries. There's an issue open to create composable caching utilities. So you don't have to write all that, but you can just say something like time to live cache 10 or 10,000. Let's see. So this is pretty low level, but it will get improved. In the meantime, you can just use this code here with a little recipe. Coming to the next gem, which is, well, caching and the BFF pattern with Nitro. We all heard about Nitro already. So let's take a look, right? We can use Nitro to build a full stack application with Nuxt, and we should definitely do that. Especially if you even have a backend with an API, you might want to wrap your existing backend in some Nitro server API routes. Because, well, first of all, it gives you end-to-end type safety in your Nuxt project. But also, it makes caching very easy. You can easily cache things through your Nitro server, and maybe you only want to cache it for this one application while your general backend shouldn't be cached. That's up to you. And of course, it's storage and runtime agnostic, right? So I thought, why not looking into a tiny application I built? It's called Demo App, yeah, creative. And let's see how we can do this. So first of all, we want to start the application. And it's running. Now let's have a look at localhost 3000 here. And maybe the one or other might know the application already. It's from a video I've published recently. And it's a very simple application I converted from Next.js, React, to Nuxt.js in an hour to just show how easy it is and how powerful Nuxt.js is. So it's just an SVG uploader to create SVGs and PNGs, or to create a square image, all that. So what we could do is, let's just say we upload an SVG, and no, not the other way around. Let's just say we upload this SVG here, right? And we could say, OK, let's give it us in a very, very big size. Maybe not that big, maybe like this. And save it, and it's here. Very straightforward. But what we actually want to do is a bit more of the caching and BFF part. So let's jump back to the code here and take a look. So first of all, we have this server folder. I make it a little bit, is it big enough? Can everyone read that? It's good? Yes? Thumbs up there, last rows as well, wonderful. So we have a server, and I already created an API folder, and it has a test.ts file. And in here, there's not much except the defined event handler. So what you could do here is just return data, hello, not world, hello Vue Fes. So we save this, and of course, switch now back and go to localhost API test. And here we see hello Vue Fes. Straight away, pretty straightforward. Now, of course, we can also give a new date to say what time it is now. And that also works pretty well. So now, if we refresh it, of course, we get the new time. And I see I don't have that much time left for the talk anymore, but we'll get there. So let's cache the whole thing. And what we can do is we say define cache event handler instead of cached event handler, typo, instead of define event handler. And now we can define a lot of caching things. So in the next argument down here, we have caching options in there. So for example, we could say, let's define a max age, which could be a minute. If we now refresh this page, it's the same date. And after a minute, and don't worry, I will not keep you waiting for a minute, no problem, the data will be refreshed. We can also set up SWR, which means the data will simply be updated behind the scenes. So when the data is stale, then the request will be done behind the scenes. The old stale data will be sent to the user. And the cache will be filled with the new data. So your loading times are still blazing fast because you never have an uncached request. But the data will still be refetched and revalidated. And there are like other options. For example, the stale max age to make sure, OK, if it's really, really old, then let's send an uncached request because, well, the data shouldn't be in there too long. You can, for example, set a different base. So say, oh, this endpoint should be cached through a Redis, right? All powered through unstorage. There are various ways. So in the end, sky is your limit. You can adapt it a lot to your liking. And you can even set the cache key through the getKey function to make sure you can also define your cache keys. And of course, if we check it right here, this is all saved in the file system in dev. But as mentioned before, you can save it in memory in any key-value store. That's fully up to you. And that also means you can eventually make sure that you get the data, you transform them away, like strip things you don't need from your backend, cache them, and you get a super fast application without much effort. And there's even one more thing we can do, because we can even generate the open API specs of our API routes. So it's pretty straightforward. And the only thing I have to do is we have to set nitro.experimental.openAPI to true. And if we do this in our little demo application, well, let's go to the Nuxt config. And you can, of course, do the same in just the Nitro project. That's the nice part. We have this set here already. So what we can just do is we go to the local host that we're here in already. We go to _nitro swagger. We have a full Swagger definition here saying, oh yeah, test, you can document things, which parameters, whatsoever. There are also other services supported. We can also get the full, I think, OpenAPI.json, if I'm not mistaken, specification. There's a JSON file and all that. But beware, and nightly, the route for that changed, so don't copy paste, check out the documentation for that. It's always helpful to read the docs. And yeah, that's, I think, also pretty straightforward, especially if you want to load the data from other applications. You can just provide them the OpenAPI definition, or want to build another type-safe client that's not based on Nitro. You have a lot of options there, or just document things. So let's jump to the next part. The next part is route rules. Who of you has used route rules with Nuxt.js so far? Okay, a few more hands than before, but still only a few. The nice part is, in your Nuxt application, you can make changes not only for the whole application. So we could just say like, S's are false, right? Say like, let's build an SPA. We don't necessarily want that. Sometimes we want to just say like, yeah, for something like /admin, this should be an SPA. But the rest should be an just server-side rendering, normal SSR application. So what we can do is, we can set up route rules for that in the Nuxt config or also in the Nitro config. And the idea is to, for example, change the rendering mode per route. You can do that. You can apply caching, not with as many options as with the define cached event handler, because you can't pass in functions or anything that's not serializable. But you can still say, hey, I want to have this cached for a minute. You can set up redirects. You can define headers. And well, even proxy requests if you want to. Of course, you need a server running for that. So with plain static site generation, that won't work. And technically, you can even create custom route rules. Like some modules do that already. So if you have a very sophisticated use case where you think, oh yeah, I need a route rule, that might be an option. So let's see, together with Nuxt scripts, what's happening in our code with the route rules. Because you know what? We have a little composable, and it's called usePlausible. This is a very simple tracking script. Talked about Nuxt scripts before. We have our wonderful function here that returns the proxy and say, oh yeah, script input, so where it should load the tracking script, it's fine. Where it should send the request to, and the data domain. The domain is coming from the runtime config, so you can set the value whenever you start your application. Don't have to do it at build time. And then we export the proxy for some, let's say, lower level operations, and the helper function just says plausible, proxy.plausible, send an event and a name. Great. But what is /v/js script.js? We never defined it anywhere. But we can just say, hey, let's redirect the whole thing. Or let's proxy it. That's even better. So in our config here, in our Nuxt config, we have the route rules. And we say, OK, /v, and this could be an arbitrary path. This could be like Vue Fes if you want to. So /v/js script.js should point to, and that's my actual plausible domain, to the script there. And same with the API event. That, of course, has the benefit that, well, your trackers are not blocked by any tracking scripts. Great for your marketing department, I guess. Or for me, who's mainly writing for developers. And altogether, you can set it up. And either you need a server running for the proxying. Sometimes platforms like Vercel, Netlify, I think Cloudflare too have support for like redirects and proxying here and there as well. So what else to say about that? Give that a try. It will make things drastically easy. But there's one more thing that I commonly like to highlight as a gem, but this is a little bonus here. If you say some route tools should only apply in production, and that applies for the whole Nuxt config, you can just define it as $development and have here config for your dev environment. Or $production, same idea. So there is even an option to use $env, or also $test for a test suite. So you can even override things from a base configuration, or say, oh yeah, the caching, I don't want my data to be cached for a day in development. Let's just only do that for production. But that's just a side note. Some of you might already be aware of that. If not, there you go. Let's talk about the last thing, which is OG image generation. Actually, we can just do 2 more things, but this will go really quick. We all like to share our URLs to our friends, right? And our application should have a very nice image. So let's use a module for that. It's made by Harlan, Nuxt core team member. And we can generate OG images either during the build time or on the fly when we want to. And it's all based on Vue components. You don't have to write anything else. And we can even preview it in DevTools. So what we can do is we can once again go to localhost 3000 here. We go here. Now we use the DevTools, right? The Nuxt DevTools. Somehow that might look similar to Vue DevTools that are the next new DevTools, somehow. And here we see already a preview of our wonderful image, right? And we can even do more. So we can say, oh, SVG, HTML, PNG, whatsoever. But we can even say, OK, let's fully change that to a different template right here. And where does it come from? Well, we have a component called general and components OG image. So in here, we have just the definition and some styles, right? And let's say, OK, I want to change it to the Pergol component, right? This here. I could just say, like, oh, you know what? Let's just take the source. It's actually bundled if you really need it straight away. Copy it over, save it, and that's it. It's there. It's generated right away. And that will work during pre-rendering or on the fly. That's also how I do it on my website, for example. So pretty straightforward. Sky's the limit. And customize as much as you want there. Of course, you can even just take screenshots if you want to. If you're not, well, I'm not that creative, so sometimes I just take a screenshot of the site. It's still better than nothing, right? The last thing, because I have only 3 minutes left, is Nuxt Dev. And you might all like wonder, wait. Nuxt Dev, we all use that every day. Why is this like a hidden gem? Why is this so special? Yeah, it's all about the arguments, right? So it's all about what we add at the end. We can enable local HTTPS out of the box with Nuxt Dev --HTTPS. Or with --open, we can straight away open the website. Saves us maybe a click or some typing. With Tunnel, we can even expose it to the public, right? And say, hey, here's a link through Cloudflare Tunnel. Try it out. I did it multiple times. It's a lot of fun. And the QR code is also possible to just scan it straight away. And there are way more arguments to explore, so have a look. The CLI is a lot of fun. And with 2 minutes left, I just ask you, are you maybe ready for more? Then feel free to follow along. I have a YouTube channel where I post, well, a video every Friday. Next week, the video that I actually recorded right before coming on stage here with Evan about Void Zero, did a little interview, will be there. And I also have a podcast with Michael Thiessen from the community called Deja Vu. So if you want to check it out, also one podcast every week, one episode. Give it a try. I want to say thank you to my sponsors. Thank you very much to allow me work in open source, even not full-time, but for parts of my time. I'm really grateful for that. And I want to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, everybody.